If you don't have one already, I would highly recommend you get a solitary bee house. They are super fun and I've loved having one, and I figured I'd give some tips and tricks as I've had one for several years and thought I might share what I've learned. So I bought a solitary bee house from Costco several years ago, and it was great. It was cheap, it was really well built, and I had it for several years and it was great. But I actually read something the other day, don't mind my dog here, hi Marley, about parasitic wasps. I had noticed some little holes that were drilled into the tubes, and I looked into it and read about these wasps, and so I decided to grab this bee house that had been in this same spot for many years and take a look, and sure enough the thing was infested. So I figure I'll tell you what I learned, and hopefully you can avoid having that problem for yourself. So the main thing that I learned is that these do require a little bit of maintenance. If you leave it out all year long, it will get filled up by solitary bees, and then it will get raided by parasitic wasps in the fall. So really the main thing is, if you do have one of these, I would highly recommend in late summer putting it in storage to then bring out sometime in the winter time to let them finish their development and then hatch in the spring. The parasitic wasps are active during the fall, and so you definitely want to be bringing your house or securing it, locking it up, figuring out a way to where these little things can't get in there. And basically the way you can tell that they're in there is the tubes will be sealed up. These obviously haven't been, and there will be tiny little holes that are drilled in by these wasps, and I believe they go in and lay their eggs, which then go and eat the larvae and the pollen and everything in there and kind of ravage it. So the main thing is you want to put your solitary bee house away or secure it or something for the fall time. So the second thing I guess I would say is these tubes. The ones before, I'll actually pull them out here. There's a couple in here. From the Costco nest that I basically destroyed because all those tubes were glued in, so you couldn't change them out. So I threw out any that had holes drilled in them, and there were, I'd say probably 90-95% were infected. And then I kept all the ones that were not. So you can see here, this has a fresh cap there. These ones are a little bit shorter than the ones that I ordered off Amazon. But yeah, basically what I did is I took these ones that are good and I put them in this coffee can, which will work just fine. And then I added all these straws here. So I did find out that female mason bees can fill up to 5 of these size tubes, which is pretty awesome. So I'd imagine that between all these here, that should hopefully fill up this entire can, which would be awesome. In Utah, we primarily have mason bees, and then we have leafcutter bees. The mason bees are active in the spring, and then the leafcutter bees are active during the summer. So I probably will leave this out through the summer to get the leafcutter bees to fill all these up, and then I will put it away before the wasps can get to them, and then I will bring it out back again in the early spring, probably late winter. So a couple things about placement. The Costco bee house that I had, I'll even show you. I put right there. So that kind of gives you an idea of placement where I had it, and that is facing towards me, facing south. So definitely not a ideal location. It just was convenient. There's like a ledge, and it worked fine. They filled it up. You know, I'd get spiders and other bugs, but it really wasn't a huge issue. I've now since learned that having morning light is great, which I actually have observed them on the house, I guess you could say, in the morning, acting very, slowly lethargic, especially the mason bees in the early spring when it's cold mornings. So you want to put it somewhere where it's facing east and ideally only getting morning sun. These things should not be just out in the sunshine all day long. You also want a pretty clear path, obviously, so that they can come on in there and they don't have to like dodge things that are by the entrance. It's recommended about 4 feet high. And another big thing, especially with mason bees, is mud. You need a source of mud. Where I live, it's fairly wet. There's a creek just a block away. There's a lot of water going on with irrigation and whatnot. So I don't have to supplement, but if you're in an area that possibly doesn't really have a whole lot of mud and just green grass and whatever, you may want to supplement and leave a dish out, which you would have to figure out a way to, constantly be wetting it and keeping a nice source of mud for them. So that's something to consider. Yeah, so what I've done is I've gotten rid of the house, and I'm just going to use this coffee can, which will be great, and I might even expand it if I can get a few more. I'm actually thinking it'd be kind of a fun gift to give people, where I can basically give them one of these that is seeded with some tubes filled with a bunch of these other tubes. And I imagine I can multiply and get several of these cans to where I could start potentially giving them as gifts to people, which would be kind of fun. So I am changing the location of where I'm putting mine. So again, this is facing south. I am going to put them right there on that pole instead of that box, which never gets used. And they'll be facing east. I'll be putting a plank of wood on the top of the post so that the can sits underneath it and gets shaded during the daytime, and it just on the face of it will get the morning sunlight. And it's in very close proximity to a plethora of gardens, fruit trees, raspberries. I mean, yeah, there's a lot going on in my yard alone, let alone my neighbors' yards. So that will be a perfect spot for them. Any sort of like edge area or kind of like a semi-protected area. It could even be put on like a tree. One other place I could totally do it would be on this willow here facing east, just nailed to the tree. So there's lots of options. But in the end, I would say from my experience, it doesn't really matter, because I had them in not an ideal location and I got them just fine to come in. So anyway, one fun thing I did want to show, let me adjust the camera here a little bit, is I took 2 of the tubes and sliced them open so that I could observe. And it's kind of fun to watch all the larvae eat up all their pollen patties, and they're getting nice and juicy and ginormous. And I do have that little water dish in there that I keep full of water for the humidity, because they'll dry out if you don't do that. But there are some hives you can buy on Amazon or wherever, where they're blocks of wood with the tube size cut out in them and then sandwiched on top of each other. So you can have the hive and then also split it open and observe them, as opposed to cutting it open like I did. But this is a real easy, but I think effective way of keeping solitary bees. I also am a beekeeper. I kept bees for many, many years. I had, I think at one point, 14 hives. This is way easier and way cheaper, and honestly probably just as effective. Mason bees, solitary bees are very effective pollinators. They do a great job. They are the native species. European honeybees are non-native. They don't do as well. So these things do the job. They cost almost no money, and the maintenance is very, very minimal. It's just moving them out of or protecting them, I guess, from the wasps, and that's about it. So anyway, just thought I would share. I am by no means an expert, but I've learned a thing or two, and would encourage you to provide a home for the solitary bees in your yard. Have fun.